And we're live. Yalam everyone, and welcome to the next episode of the Sports Show. My name's Aman Ibrahim, and we're joined today by Alim Hirji. Yalam Alim.
Aman, how are you doing?
I'm well, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you.
Very glad to have you on the show today, Alim. So why don't you start by telling us a little bit about yourself and your career?
So my name's Alim. Hirji has introduced me. I'm 30 years old, which makes me sound really old, actually. I grew up in London, born and bred in London. The reason why I'm on the show is table tennis, which is my sport which is my main sport throughout my life. Started when I was around 11 years old, but I think we'll get to that. Grew up in London, as I said. Studied economics at Nottingham University, which I know you did as well. That's obviously a bond we've got. And then I went to work at Accenture, which is a management consultancy, for a number of years. And now I'm working in the family business whilst trying to still play table tennis, amongst other sports as well.
Great stuff, Alim. And I was really excited when I was asked to interview you, because obviously we know each other quite well. And I would kind of describe you as a real onion. You've got a lot of layers to peel back. So hopefully today we'll be able to see some more of those layers. So what we'll start the interview with a little bit something different, with a quick fire round. So it'll be 3 questions and answer them in the shortest time possible. So the first question is, would you rather be able to speak every language in the world or be able to talk to animals?
Every language in the world, or talk to animals.
Talk to animals? Which animal?
No, I mean, you'd say I can talk to every animal, right?
Yeah, true, but which one would you be most inclined to speak to?
Maybe birds, certain birds that can fly. I think languages.
Next question.
Quick fire.
Quick fire round, dude.
Yeah, go on.
Favorite book and why?
Favorite book. I'm not too much of a reader. I like to listen to podcasts more. Maybe that's probably not so good, but maybe Harry Potter. I know it's a bit of maybe a childish one, but it's
all-time classic.
Yeah, and I grew up with it, so yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Right.
3 words to describe yourself.
Describe myself. Funny. You can probably attest that. Passionate, I'd say.
Okay. Interesting.
And happy, I guess.
Good. I'm glad to hear that, Alim. Now, Alim, I've had the pleasure of watching you play many sports. Football, golf, maybe not so well, but table tennis obviously very well. So tell us a little bit about your career. Why you got into table tennis, at what age, and when things started heating up, when they started getting a little bit more serious.
Yeah, so I started when I was, as I mentioned before, when I was about 11 years old.
Okay.
Relatively late for someone to start to compete at trying to compete at relatively high level.
Sure.
But at the time I played a number of other sports as well, particularly tennis at the time, where I was probably better at tennis than I was at table tennis. At that time I was probably playing both quite a lot, and then I kind of had to focus on one essentially. And the reason I chose table tennis at that time was, to be honest, the coach at table tennis really took me under his wing, and I felt a better connection with him than I did at the coach at tennis. As I said, I was probably playing better tennis than I was at table tennis, but I think part of the reason why I pushed hard at table tennis was because it was a little bit more of a challenge to me. I wasn't the most talented person at table tennis, but I had something that I wanted to win. I really was fighting, and I remember there used to be a game called Top Table, when there's a number of tables, and you win the match, you go up, you lose a match, you go down. And I just remember at the start I was not one of the better players. I just kind of started, but I somehow managed to always end near the top, just by trying to fight and trying to win, and I think that kind of pushed me to go.
So I guess you'd say you're motivated by challenge, right? And you've always got quite an innate drive to push yourself and become better. And do you think that's a quality a lot of sports people at the highest level would have? And do you think that's translated into other parts of your life?
100% in terms of sport. I think you can't, talent alone cannot drive you to the top of any sport or any discipline. And yeah, of course, it helps in other aspects of life, because part of it is understanding that. So you understand that, if you're good at something or you're talented at something, which I think everyone is better and worse at certain things than other people. It doesn't necessarily mean that's your limit.
Sure.
In anything, not just sport.
Okay, interesting. Now, was there like a light bulb moment in your career where you thought, okay, this is kind of heating up a little bit. I'm taking it more seriously, and I feel like I'm going somewhere now. And then how did that kind of progress going forward? And talk us a little bit through your journey to the upper echelons of the sport.
I can't nail down a light bulb moment. I think it was a series of light bulb moments for me. As I said, I started relatively late. So when I started competing initially in the under 13 category, most of the players had known each other. They played numerous competitions. So for me, I transitioned to that in a very relatively short space of time. But getting on the ranking list, top 15 and under 13s in England, obviously gives you a spark. You then progress, and you beat certain players that you think, oh, hang on, he's a respected player. He's top 10 in England, top 5 in England, and you manage to beat these players. That helps motivate you, because it gives you kind of that self-belief. I think, as you mentioned, going up to when I was competing at the highest level for me, was probably when I was about in my late teens or early 20s. It is a lot of it is down to results. I'm not saying you should chase those results, because those results will come as you improve and as you put in the hard work and as you get better. But definitely getting those results, seeing yourself on the ranking list in certain places and competing in certain tournaments and winning certain tournaments, that definitely in your head justifies you to kind of be where you are.
For sure. I guess it's a kind of striking a balance between getting those results and aiming for kind of constant self-improvement. And those kind of two forces put together, I guess, is what drives you. Would you agree?
Definitely. I mean, yeah, it's a tricky one. I think everyone's motivated by different things as well. I think to self-better yourself for me was key. You want to improve as an athlete yourself, and as I said, the results and those things come if you put in hard work and you get and you push yourself to to better yourself in whatever you want to try and achieve. Even specific parts of your game that you want to try and improve.
Sure.
That's what you should be aiming for, as opposed to not. You shouldn't be aiming for results. That will come.
They'll come.
Now, Alim, you mentioned that the peak of your career, or maybe not the peak, but the most important time of your career was in your late teens and early 20s. Could you tell us a little bit about what that looked like, what level you were competing on, and where that took you?
Yeah, so so growing up, probably when I was about 16 or 17, I played my first foreign league. So I used to play in British leagues and UK leagues, etc. And I'd been abroad growing up, so I'd been abroad, but mainly for competition. So I'd been to, I can't name all the names of places I've been to, but most of Europe, and as I'm growing up, which was, I think, that's another point. I think for someone who sport can take you to especially table tennis specifically, because you can go for individual competitions. It took me everywhere in Europe and also outside of Europe as well, even just growing up, which I don't think you have that opportunity too often as a kid. And then when I was, I think, 17, I played in Hungary. So my coach was Hungarian, so I had that link. So I competed in a league there, and that was the first kind of glimpse of me being kind of a semi-professional or professional athlete. Whereas I was playing for a team, getting paid. I was actually kind of getting paid per win there, so it was more stressful.
Wow.
It put more pressure on you. And then subsequently, when I was 18, 19, I had my highest UK ranking, so English ranking. I was ranked 13 in England, and I'd beaten some kind of, I say, big names in table tennis like Liam Pitchford and Darius Knight and people like that. Who in table tennis you probably heard of these people. And at the time they were good players, and at that point I thought, okay, I'm a relatively good player. I'm playing. I then went to university. So as I said, I went to Nottingham University, and I played in Belgium. So I signed for a club in Belgium. So for 2 years I played in Belgium. After university, I then went to Budapest. So I then lived in Budapest for a year.
Wow.
And that probably propelled me to improve a little bit more. Essentially, go on.
What was the decision like to take that move out to Budapest?
Yeah, so education was always a key part of my kind of upbringing and growing up. And I think I did, culture, parents, I couldn't sacrifice my education for that. So I think growing up until 18, it wasn't a question of whether or not I was keeping my education. And then it was a question of, I wanted to see if I could improve. I think it was too late for me at that point to challenge to become full-time player for the rest of my life. But I still think I could. I was pushing to. I was kind of pushing towards that boundary. So I wanted to take a year out to just play full-time, and I did that after university. And I could have done that before university, probably, and I would have. It would have been great to see the difference between when I go there when I was 18, after I was just coming off the best results, as opposed to after university. But the motivation was just trying to improve. I think I was playing in Hungary. I was playing essentially 9 to 5, training, fitness every single day, weekends competing or practicing, or I was playing in Austria, in the league in Austria. So I wanted to push myself and try and improve, and I did. I feel like I did at that level at the time. Yeah.
Playing 9 to 5 is incredibly kind of strenuous, both mentally and physically. Do you think that's kind of affected the love you had for the game, maybe before and after going there?
That's a good question, actually. I think when I went there to when I left, I didn't understand. I'd never done that before, right? I'd never committed to play. 8 hours a day, or maybe 6 or 7 hours a day, but maybe not on the table 6 or 7 hours a day, but including the physical, including the serve training and all that stuff. I don't think I lost any love for it, but I think I at the time I'd had a job offer from Accenture, which is also something I really wanted to do as well. And so when I finished 1 year, I was kind of a toss-up between whether or not I do another year or I go back, and I decided to come back for a few reasons, but I don't think I lost the love for it, because I'm still competing today, which is 8-9 years on from there. But I probably didn't. I kind of understand what it was to live your whole life like that, and it is essentially it changes a little bit from your hobby to a job in a degree, and that is definitely a mindset change.
For sure, bringing that new dimension into things can really change the way you feel about the sport and the way you play it as well, right? Yeah. Okay, very cool. Now, if I were to ask you to pick out one highlight in your career, what would you pick? And this is in your kind of professional career. Incredibly difficult question, I know. There must be a few. Maybe there's one match that really sticks out for you.
There's a few highlights, I guess. I think when I first played for England at a senior level, and wearing the England kit and all that stuff, that was quite cool. And playing with, because I was always on the periphery of the England team. I was never the core kind of A team or whatever. I was pushing into that, and yes, I'd beat a few of the players occasionally, but I was not at that level. So for me, I'd kind of played a couple of times, growing up in certain tournaments where the top guys didn't play. But the first time I played when the top guys did play and I played, and that was quite special, I think.
Must have felt incredible.
I think there's a couple of times where I played really, really crunch matches for title, for British League titles, like our team titles, which just stick out in my memory as I can still remember those moments. And then I guess also Jubilee Games. I mean, I played both the Jubilee Games, and that was a very different experience for me. And yeah, they're highlights for sure as well.
Sure, that's a nice segue into our next bit about, I guess, in every Ismaili sports person's career, there's the kind of two sides of the coin. You've got your more professional side of the career, competing in a club level and an international level, and then you've got the Ismaili side of the career, and both can be incredibly competitive as well, right? So you mentioned you went to Jubilee Games. Did you go to both of them and compete in both of them?
Yeah.
Incredible. And how was the experience, Alim?
Two very different experiences. The first one was in Kenya in 2008, which again, 12 years ago. For me, that was a little bit of a blur. Like I remember, certain bits and elements of it. The actual competitive, competing. I don't actually remember much of it. I remember the whole. I remember lots of the actual event itself, which was amazing. It was probably my first, big event. I didn't really know that many people. I was in the UK team. I was 18 was the limit to go, and I was 18, so I was essentially the youngest person there.
Wow.
Competing with lots of people older than me, and the experience there was brilliant. Dubai was very, very different. There was a lot more resource thrown at it. It was more of a spectacle. I would say Kenya had a bit more authenticity, but this had more kind of big bang appeal.
Sure.
And yeah, both were different and both were great, and it was great to be part of that.
Incredible, and you managed to win both Jubilee games as well. Big congratulations for that, I guess. Did it feel different winning both, or was it a similar kind of feeling?
So the second time in Dubai, some of the people were the same kind of people that played from Kenya, so they did know who I was and they know that I'd won. So I feel like a lot of people were gunning for me to try and beat me. So on one hand, it was nice because people knew me, and that I know I also recognised them, and it was nice to see faces that you've not seen for a long time from all different countries around the world. And on the other hand, everyone wanted to beat me, so it was interesting. But luckily, I managed to retain it.
Everyone's kind of setting themselves up for that challenge then.
Yeah.
No one's completed it to date, but we'll see in the next few years.
Yes, yeah, we will.
What Ismaili talent comes through the ranks.
Now, I guess we talked a lot about the highlights of your career. Have you had any kind of low points in your career? Points where you kind of not fallen out of love with the sport, but really, really had to dig deep to carry on playing and get through it?
That's a good question. I don't think there's any specific huge low light. Where I'd. I guess when I started university, I took a few months off, and I think I was overwhelmed with it was the first university. I hadn't been in that kind of environment before, and
Sure.
for the first 3 or 4 months, I didn't really play for like 3 months, which is probably the longest I'd not played.
Wow.
And then I kind of got back into it and signed for a club in Belgium, and it kind of motivated me to go. But in terms of lowlights, I don't think there was anything specific. Of course, there were moments where I didn't quite qualify for this, or I didn't win this tournament. I think every match you play is effectively a highlight or a lowlight in theory, right? Because
Sure.
you either win or you lose. There's no middle ground there. And so throughout my career and I've played, there's always been moments where I've lost really important matches. I've lost, I can, for the top of my head, I can remember we had from a team event, we were essentially a few points away from winning the league, which was obviously a whole year, and we, so those kind of moments
Sure.
definitely were there. But as I said, I don't think there was anything overly where I felt super depressed. Don't get me wrong, I've lost matches and I've cried after losing matches, and I've been upset, but ultimately there were a series of small lowlights, and then you've got to pick yourself up and you compete for the next tournament, and when you play well and you win a big match, that's what drives you to and motivates you to kind of proceed and carry on.
For sure. And I guess I've had the good fortune of watching you play on a number of occasions. And it's safe to say every time you play with the same intensity, the same concentration. Do you think that's something that's developed over time, something you've worked at to develop as well? Or is that something you were just kind of, maybe not born with, but had as soon as you started playing table tennis?
But personally, I think you can definitely learn it, the concentration. I think I was lucky in the fact that I was quite kind of focused and intent, when I was a young athlete competing, and I think is very, very important to kind of to be focused when you're not only when you're competing but when you're training as well. It's very easy to say I'm practicing X amount of times, and I'm doing, even when you do physical, when you go for a run, even if anyone goes for a run, it's very easy to do something at 60% capacity. And ultimately you may not improve. You will not improve at the same level as if you're focusing so I think yes, I was lucky the fact that I had that in me from a young age, but I've definitely improved it over time, and you can definitely channel and focus in different ways, and not only when you're competing, but I think it's important when you're kind of off the table and practicing as well.
Sure, and you mentioned that's something you have to almost nurture over time. And I guess it's something that's up to your coach as well for you to nurture. And that brings us quite nicely on to the next aspect, which is the role models in your career. Now, you mentioned your Hungarian coach as well, who actually motivated you to pick table tennis over tennis. Have there been any other role models in your kind of career that you look up to?
I think there's a few role models within table tennis that which I guess the audience wouldn't know of, but they're quite local to me. So when I first started, I walked into the club and I saw two players playing, and I was like, wow, this is what I want to be. And obviously I know them, and the level that they were playing at was quite it wasn't kind of super up here, but at that time I'd never played, and it was like, wow.
Something to aspire to, right?
Something to aspire to, exactly. And then as you go kind of get along, and as I said, I started to compete with the higher level people in England and the top players, and you see them playing, like you see the Paul Drinkle and those kind of players playing. You're like, okay, wow, this is what I want to be able to compete and want to achieve. So I think there's people within table tennis that kind of push you. I think generally Rafa Nadal in the tennis world has always motivated me. I'm not ashamed to say I had a poster of him up on my wall with his Vamos signatory celebration. I think his passion, his desire, you can tell that is not something that he's born with. Of course, you are talented. You see, I'd always look at him compared to Roger Federer, for example. Federer is great and arguably the greatest ever. But you look at Nadal, he maybe wasn't blessed with the suaveness and the talent of Federer, but he definitely worked for that, not on the court, he worked for that off the court. He fought hard, he trained smart, and his intensity, as you said, and his passion when he's playing is amazing to see. And he's also a very humble guy, and when you look at him in interviews afterwards. So I think definitely Nadal, he was definitely one of my sporting role models growing up.
Yeah, no, that's very interesting, Alim. Now, you said the highlight of your career was kind of during your, late teens, early 20s when you played abroad in Belgium as well. Now, obviously, due to demands of normal life, I guess, you've toned down that kind of playing at maybe the highest level, but you still train quite a lot and play quite a lot at the moment. Do you have ambitions to go back to that level, or maybe move into something else, like coaching, playing, coaching in your local club, taking on some kids, that kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. I think as I've got older, I don't practice as much as I used to. I'm trying as much as I can to play, twice a week still, and keep and on the table, and then also keep fit. I'm interested in lots of other sports. I'm playing, tennis and golf and going to the gym and running and things like that. But table tennis is still, my biggest passion, especially from a sports perspective. And my ambition ultimately is to try and maintain as much as I can. It is a little bit heartbreaking when you go to certain tournaments and you should beat people that 10 years, 5 to 10 years ago I would have beaten players, and then you go and then suddenly you're an inch slower, or you miss balls that you shouldn't have missed. So I think I want to try and maintain at some sort of high level for as long as I can, because I still love the sport. I really do.
Definitely.
Amazing, Alim. So what we'll do, we'll finish the interview on two things. The first thing will be, if you had advice for anyone coming into the sport right now, what would it be?
Into table tennis specifically, I think, and I guess it translates into other sports. Sport, as with anything, has innovated over time, and I think so. Two things from that. So one, the way I was coached at a young age, or the way anyone was coached at that age, would be different from the way you should be coached now. There's much higher demands on physical attributes. There's much more, the various technical things around the sport is important. And then the second thing is, as I mentioned at the start, there's absolutely no substitute for hard work and working hard. I don't care how talented you are. If you're talented, that's a bonus, and then that could propel you to higher echelons. I think you mentioned than me, but I still think you need to make sure you work hard, and yeah, that's the kind of advice I'd give.
Definitely. And the last question I've got for you today, Alim, is tell us something about yourself that people don't know or wouldn't expect.
Something that they don't know or wouldn't expect. Again, maybe a toss-up between two. One, I quite like romantic comedies. I don't know if that's a bad one.
Interesting. Okay.
And 2, I also like singing in the shower.
Okay, I think we've got to know you a little bit more than we expected to today, then, Alim. Lovely stuff. Thank you very much for coming onto the show, Alim, and Yalam with everyone.
Thank you very much, Ramon.
Take care.